So most people won't ever believe in you until you get to the finish line. I just wanted to get that point across because, there was something that I was inspired to make a video about earlier in the year, but I never got around to doing it, but I still wanted to talk about it. So Zaytoven sat down with Tank on the R&B Money podcast where he discussed a couple of different things, but one thing that caught my attention that he talked about was his early experiences working with Future and how he really just didn't like Future's music. So he said that Rocko, now mind you, Rocko is the original person that had signed Future. And so Future was one of his artists, but he said Rocko used to bring Future with him to Zaytoven's house where he had a studio and they would record songs, and Zaytoven disliked Future's style so much to the point where he would remove Future off of his beats because he thought that Future was ruining his beats basically. And but despite that, Future still wanted to use Zaytoven beats. He even used Zaytoven's beats on the original Dirty Sprite album. And Zaytoven detailed how it was a very quick story. He detailed how when he first heard that Future used his beats on the Dirty Sprite album, he was actually kind of annoyed. But once the songs actually blew up, he talked about just how grateful he was, or just how excited he was that he actually decided to use his songs in the first place, or use his beats in the first place. Now, I don't respect that, but before I critique Zaytoven, I just first wanted to actually look at it from Zaytoven's perspective, right? So in the late 2000s and in the early 2010s, Zaytoven was arguably at his peak in popularity. Now, I know Zaytoven, he's still popular to this day, but at the same time, in that era of hip hop, I feel like Zaytoven was just on another level as far as popularity. Whereas Future at that time was a relatively unknown artist, but what Future did have going for him in his favor was he already had a bunch of industry connections. You know, like he if I'm not mistaken, he had writing credit. Like Future has writing credits that go back to like 2004 on the Ludacris album. I believe the song might have been called like Blueberry Yum Yum or something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's also the cousin of Rico Wade, RIP, like the legendary producer from Organized Noise. So basically, Future's like an extension of the Dungeon family. And again, like I said earlier, Future was signed to Rocko already. So in Rocko at that time in the late 2000s, he had a buzz, and Future was the guy. Future was who Rocko decided he wanted to put in Zaytoven's path in the first place. So from Zay's perspective, it might have been annoying that a random dude was coming along with Rocko to hop on his beats, especially if he thinks that the guy is whack. But especially if the guy who he thinks is whack has a very odd style. Because at the time, obviously, Future style was not like a normal thing that now it is obviously. But at that time, it's like I don't remember Zaytoven mentioning the specific year, but again, obviously, if this was happening before Dirty Sprite, this is obviously late 2000s, early 2010s. So again, still Future style was not that normal at that time. So he was definitely ahead of the curve from that perspective. But now look, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing if you don't like somebody's music. That's fine. But the issue that many people, when they saw this clip, when people saw this clip, the issue many people, including myself, had with this clip was not only did you dislike Future, but you low key tried to sabotage him by taking him off of the songs that he did with Rocco over your beats. You could have just saved a bunch of time by saying you thought he was whack and didn't want him to mess up your beats, and just really just keep your distance from him and Rocco altogether, especially if you know that anytime Rocco's coming around, he's going to bring Future with him. Another thing that I noticed is that Zay said that now, after Future already blew up, that Future's his favorite artist. But at no point in the interview, at no point during the section of the interview, did he really mention what it was about Future's music that turned him into a believer. The only thing he mentioned was, "Oh, when I saw how it tore up the streets, I had a change of heart." So that doesn't sound like you actually like his music to this day. Really, like it to me, it clearly sounds like what you're saying is you still don't really like his music or his style, but you want to hop on the bandwagon because it's making you money. And also, since now Future is actually bigger and more relevant than him, he wants to stay on Future's good side, obviously. So he's calling Future his favorite artist. I think people like this are dangerous, not because he didn't like Future's music. Like, that's his prerogative. He has a right to not like somebody's music. But because, in addition to not liking his music, you low key tried to sabotage him by doing something as discouraging as removing his verses off of songs that he and Rocko were doing over your beats. People like this are dangerous because if Future or any artist in that situation, if they experience something like that and if they had taken it personally, and I don't know if Future knew that Zaytoven was removing him from the beats or not, but like let's say Future did know, right? If Future or any artist takes that personally, he would have probably quit and never reach his full potential. Like there's plenty of artists who never really reached their full potential and never really tried because at a very early point in the process, people who don't see their vision and just don't like their style are so quick to just really try to tear them down. And I also think it's dangerous because when you make the mistake of bringing people like this up, bringing them up with you, they'll definitely throw you under the bus as soon as you start to fall off. Now, Zay was already popular before Future, before he met Future. So technically that last point I just made, it doesn't fully apply to Zay because Zay didn't like come up with Future. He was already up and so Future didn't bring him up. But at the same time, Future did help him sustain his career by adding more street anthems to his list of credits, obviously. So is there anything that we all can learn from this? Yeah, I think there is. From an artist perspective, I think all you can really take away from it is to just kind of keep doing your own thing and just keep focusing on whoever your target demographic is, trying to pinpoint who your target demographic is in the first place, and just trying to only focus on them and trying to avoid people. No offense to him, but try to avoid people like Zaytoven who straight up just sounds like a hater. Like that's not somebody you would want to affiliate with because like he showed no. It's not even, again, like I said, it's not even just the fact that he didn't like his music. It's the fact that he sounded as if he really wasn't open minded to this person with a different style that may have been a little off putting at the time. Like he just didn't sound open minded at all, and that's a common thing you'll notice with many artists who are trying to get started is they will run into a lot of people who don't get it. Not only don't get their style, don't like it, but then also they're not even open minded enough to say, hey, even though I don't like this and I think this is garbage or it's just not my cup of tea, I could still see where this can work because in this day and age, there's almost a lane for pretty much any style of music. Not even just hip hop. That's just music in general. You could be somebody who's making like a genre that's like a mixture of like bluegrass, heavy metal, and trap. But but you just found a way to make it work together, and people might think that sounds ridiculous now, but you fast forward 5 years, and all of a sudden, your style is the new normal. So I definitely think overall for artists, the lesson would just be to keep doing your thing. But even if you're not an artist, even if you're somebody who's just a fan of music, and you might know somebody who's an artist, I think the lesson there is just to be open minded. Because again, the person that you know right now who you may not fully get what they're doing, or you may not fully like it all the way. Again, you never know. You never know because one, you really should listen to music multiple times before you just jump out and say you don't like it. Because a lot of people, they'll listen to songs for like 3 seconds because they have like short attention spans. You'll listen to it for like, a lot of people, they'll listen to it for like 3 seconds and already make up their mind and say it's whack and then move on. When really, you should actually listen to it multiple times in different settings. Because again, sometimes you might hear one song at one point in time in one setting, it might not hit you, but then all of a sudden you fast forward a few weeks in a different setting, and for some reason it just like connects with you more for one reason or another. Maybe you went through something that directly relates to the song topic or whatever the case may be. But still, in general, I think we all should be a little more open minded. But that's just my thoughts really of that whole situation. What do you think about the situation? Do you think Zaytoven was out of line for trying to take Future's music off of his beats back in the day? And do you think this makes Zaytoven look a little shady because he only got got on the bandwagon of Future once he saw that everybody else already liked him?